gestures over there, just so you know. Testing, testing. Yeah. Testing, testing. Testing, testing. Yes.
Are we good? Okay, the microphone is on, folks. I'll call, in the absence of a chair for the moment, I will call to order this May 27th special meeting, work session meeting of the City Council for City of Two Rivers. For folks that might be tuning in live, we apologize for the delay. Both the city manager and two council members were tied up in a meeting with the Business Industrial Development Committee Community Development Authority that just ended. As soon as we do the pledge and following roll call, the first item of business will be to elect a temporary chair for the evening because we have neither the president and vice president here. However, at this point, let us all rise for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now, roll call, please.
Bonnie Shimonis. Here. Scott Stegmesser. Adam Husky.
Both absent, excused. Mr. Stegmesser, Mr. Husky.
Carol Leclerc. Here. Mark Bittner.
Here.
Shannon Derby. Here. Bill Leclerc.
Here.
Doug Grant.
Here.
Tim Petrie.
Tim, we're still expecting, to the best of my knowledge. I haven't heard anything from him. We do have a quorum with 6 out of the 9 council members now present. First item on the agenda was just to recap something that you have all seen, which I failed to keep a copy of, and that is just to recap and review with folks the schedule for this week for the 4 city manager finalist candidates that will be in town. They are doing a tour on Thursday, individually doing tours, an hour each on Thursday. I will be guiding them. Chief Ben will be accompanying me, Chief Minor, and Council President Stegmesser may or may not be back in town for the tours. He will be here for the meet and greet that evening for other activities. So Mr. Felt, Mr. Thiel, Mr. Credell, Mr. Demmel will each get a 1-hour tour. Those names, of course, were shared along with brief bios with the community, with the press release that went out Friday. And we have shared it with various community groups, TRBA membership, and our various boards and committees. Public is invited. And despite what you may have seen on social media, it is incredibly common to have meet and greets for city administrator or city manager candidates. Just Google city administrator meet and greet or city manager meet and greet. That's simple. Just thought I'd mention that. There is the meet and greet from 6 to 8 p.m. at the community house. This references that candidates and their spouses or significant others are invited to attend. None of the candidates for the activities this week are bringing their spouses or significant others with them, just as an FYI. And that's to meet with members of the city council, department heads, and other community stakeholders at the community house. Things will be set up in the gym. There will be tables and chairs in each of the 4 corners of the gym. The candidates will introduce themselves to the group, give a quick introduction, and then we'll rotate among the 4 stations. We would ask, and the consultants will take care of this that night, but that the council divide up so there are maybe 2 of you, 2 and a quarter of you at each of the locations, and along with members of the public. And there'll be a couple of introductory questions or topics that the candidates will be asked to address when they come up to a group, and then there's the opportunity for questions from people in the group, whether it's council members, department heads, or members of the general public that are there. There will be, I understand, forms distributed, so particularly the members of the public that are there can share some of their impressions of the candidates, and any feedback received from those forms will be compiled and reported back to the city council on Friday after the interviews. You'll be getting a bunch of information after you've concluded your interviews for finalist candidates. I will not be around on Thursday evening other than for the initial introduction of the department heads and candidates. I don't have a place there after that. Friday, there will be various activities in the morning at City Hall. Each candidate will rotate among 4 separate 1-hour sessions. They will either be engaged in a writing exercise, engaged in a staff conversation with all of the department heads here in the council chambers, facilitated by one of the staff from Public Administration Associates, Daryl Hoffland, the retired former city administrator of Sheboygan and Grafton prior to that. Most of you haven't met, but he's a partner with Kevin Bruner and others in PAA. He'll be facilitating that staff conversation and eliciting feedback from the department heads as a group from those sessions to share again with City Council. Our 2 city attorneys from West and Dunn will be here for those department heads or conversations as well on Friday morning. Each candidate will also do a written emotional intelligence assessment, and then there will be 1 break. So you've got, each candidate has 4 1-hour blocks in the morning, a writing exercise, a staff conversation, the emotional intelligence assessment, and a break. They rotate through that, as you see on the schedule here. City Council convenes at 11:45 on Friday, and then the interviews commence at, the interviews commence at 12:15. So there's an opportunity for a 1-hour interview at 12:15. That meeting does start at 11:45, right? I was thinking it was 15 minutes, but that gives half an hour of prep time for the consultants. They've gotten feedback from council on your preferred interview questions. I know identifying the top 20 out of a list of, I think, 83 that went out to council. One thing that I was supposed to get out Friday, but we'll get out tonight, is similarly a list of potential writing exercise questions. Would ask that just over the next couple of days, you identify your preferences out of that. The intent is that the meeting of the City Council, while we'll convene an open session, the interviews will be enclosed as permitted under Wisconsin law. The council will also discuss the various candidates, discuss feedback from the emotional intelligence assessment, feedback from the meeting with department heads, the tours with the city manager, the written exercise, also any feedback from the meet and greet session. That will all be assimilated, and the consultants will be counsel in a process that would be designed to lead to identification of the top candidate by the time you leave here on Friday night. Val, City Hall closes at 11:30 on Fridays. Val will be here until 3-ish. I'll be coming into the office, but staying in my office from 3 o'clock on. First to pop in briefly and provide information on the tours, feedback from the tours, and just to be available so somebody's here in the building to order pizza or provide other support, but I will in no way be part of the interviews or the council's post-interview assessment. So, does that make sense? Any questions? Is everybody here available for the full afternoon on Friday? Mark?
I just want to make a comment, because Facebook has jumped all over this and activities. I know not everyone reads Facebook, and that's a good thing, but some people do. The meet and greet at the community house is very important because the citizens who do attend will be able to make comments, as Mr. Buckley said, on the forum, and make comments about, and it'll be consolidated. So we will see if there's a part of community like particular candidate or others, that will be part of the overall evaluation process. There's also another important ingredient too. It gives us an opportunity in the general community to see how these candidates react to that type of session, react to the citizens, some tough questions, react to the crowd, react to the movement, associate with the individual. So it's an important night, and we appreciate people who come with the right frame of mind.
I should mention too, this, Mr. Bruner at PAA is also going to be forwarding a draft employment agreement with some blanks in it to our city attorneys at West and Dunn, so they're familiar with it. And hopefully when council gets down to the final details of an employment agreement, can address that time. I don't know if you'll be in a position next Monday to hopefully to vote on a top candidate, since no spouses, partners, significant others are coming with. Don't be surprised if a top candidate says, well, that's great, but I want to, give it some thought and come back for a follow-up visit. That's not unheard of. And PAA can handle that for you. All 4 candidates, as identified in the release on Friday, are, as of today, still intending to be here Thursday and Friday. So just thought it was good that we take that opportunity, and I was so excited to talk about it that I skipped over your selecting an acting chair for the meeting. I apologize for that. So I would at this time ask for nominations for an acting chair solely for the purpose of presiding over the rest of this meeting. Mr. Leclerc. Okay.
Second that.
Grant, second by Shannon. Are there any other nominations?
I was going to nominate Mr. Bittner.
Okay. Are you still?
Sure.
Okay.
I think that was a good choice.
Okay. Mr. Bittner noting he would be happy with Doug being chair. I've not yet heard a second.
I was going to second, but I'm confused.
Yeah. Give a second.
That's what I said.
Oh, you gave a second to Mark?
Yeah.
No,
Oh,
to Doug.
sorry.
Okay, right now, yeah, so if Mark's statement stands, that motion would die for lack of a second.
All in favor, then say aye.
Aye. Doug, you're the chair for this meeting.
All right. Very good. So we covered A.
Yep. Matt, you want to join us at the table for the next item? Thanks.
Move on to B, discussion of possible alternative uses for city-owned 1.33 acre parcel at the corner of 18th and Hawthorne in the Columbus Industrial Park.
And Sean, I'm sorry, I don't think I forwarded this to you today. But bear with us. Bear with us. Okay. We'll try to keep, yeah, I'm sorry. We'll try to keep things moving along. We discussed when we reviewed the goals and progress on the goals for 2024 and new goals for 2025. It was Personnel and Finance's recommendation, affirmed by City Council, to take a look at the triangular parcel. This is first sheet out of the handout that at the bottom says 1 of 15. To take a look at the 1.33 acre parcel on Hawthorne Avenue at 18th Street. It is currently city-owned, part of the Columbus Industrial Park. It is owned I-2 residential. It does abut residential neighborhoods to the east and north. The other corner where you go into the industrial park, shown there in the upper left corner, that 1.4 acre parcel is mostly a stormwater detention pond now. The discussion out of Personnel and Finance and at Council, when you look at the goals for this year, was to evaluate whether it might make sense to look at residential zoning and possible residential uses as an alternative for that location. I think it's fair to say for a lot of years it served as a buffer for the adjoining residential neighborhoods. And given the small size and the configuration, it's not a likely site for an industry of any size at that location. Following up on that goal, Matt spent some time working on conceptual plans for different residential uses there, and I'll be quiet and let him walk through the alternatives that are shown for you.
So the second sheet is primarily showing where we have underground utilities as far as sanitary water and storm sewer. So in short, it has services around it, so that's a good thing. We don't have to extend any services there. If we opt to use Lowell as our primary point of entrance into this parcel instead of 18th or Hawthorne, we would have to do a little bit of additional pavement or road building there.
Lowell is paved with curb and gutter up past the southernmost lots that are shown there,
Yes.
with houses on, and then it's unimproved as a street, other than the utilities. Okay, thanks.
Yep. So page 3, 3 of 15, is if we just looked at it as a traditional city lot, just that 1.3 acres, with by ordinance, a 100-foot diameter or 50-foot radius paved cul-de-sac, then adding additional 10 to 15 feet for right-of-way behind the actual pavement, 30-foot setback for R1 zoning off the cul-de-sac, and then 20-foot setbacks or 25-foot setbacks off of both Hawthorne and 18th. You're left with about 20 foot of buildable space. So basically a traditional city, traditional residential lot within the city-owned parcel would not work.
With a cul-de-sac.
With a cul-de-sac. However, if we looked at possibly acquiring the private parcel to the south of the city-owned parcel, roughly that 0.444 acre parcel, slid the cul-de-sac down, basically the same setbacks, you could get 5 lots on there, plus the parcel at the corner of 18th and Buchholz would still remain a private parcel. So we would have to spend money to make money to make a cul-de-sac in order to get 5 lots there. But that again would be R1 zoning.
And that would be contingent on approaching a property owner on a property that's not currently on the market.
Correct.
What is that currently zoned?
R3.
R3, okay.
Is that part of their plan? Lot then?
No.
It's
It's
an outlot, an
it's
extra lot.
Separate.
Undeveloped property.
It's an undeveloped property owned by the property owner to the south. So the northwest corner of Lowell and 17th.
Might be worth a dialogue, not something, I don't believe something the city could use condemnation for, so, nor would I advise.
So somebody pick up 5 lots.
Yep. So, I mean, it's just showing kind of an option. A little more untraditional, so we would have to look at a variance to our subdivision code, but in lieu of a cul-de-sac, just utilizing a hammerhead, and the final hammerhead size would need to be tweaked to make sure we could either get snowplow or garbage trucks in or out. Right now, when we snowplow that, we literally plow up to the dead end and then back out.
Good one, enough room for a garbage truck, snowplow, or maybe a fire truck, a 3-point turn.
Yep.
Could we modify that and make it a mushroom head and kind of put a radius on that?
Basically, it's still a hammerhead. Just tweaking, yeah.
Just to make it a little more drivable.
Yep.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
So I mean, we could potentially do, instead of a 100-foot diameter, look at a 60-foot diameter. So I mean, you're gaining a little bit more frontage, so to speak, or footage, but those setbacks still come into play, especially with the R1 zoning. For new lots, you're looking at 30-foot front yard setbacks, where if we started taking a look at R3, which are similar to the properties to the south, the residential properties to the south, you'd be looking at a 25-foot average, 25-foot minimum front yard setback, or the average of the adjacent parcels, which again is about 25 feet. So whether that's R2 or R3.
And R2 or R3 would give developers the opportunity to look at duplexes there, which is something is a permitted use in the existing neighborhood historically. And those give you some, just by the color commentary, some pretty nice lots there. It's a little different in that the backyards back up to 18th and to Hawthorne. On the other hand, with some screening, that could be good for both visual and noise. It's not unheard of. You come into the north side of Manitowoc, and you've got backyards along the main. Yeah, too, and they're oriented toward a more residential street. That would also mean that the adjacent property owners to the south on either side of Lowell could have the option of making those lots available for development as well.
The property to the east, south and east of the Hammerhead, that is actually all one large parcel.
Mhm.
It just has an easement running through the
And how many lots did the Hammer give us?
middle of it. That would give us 4.
4 city lots.
And we would not have to acquire that southwesterly lot as a traditional cul-de-sac would.
The only, I know I'm going down the road a little bit, if you were assessing for the surface improvements, you might hear from abutting property owners wanting to see those deferred. That would be a decision to be weighed at that time. If you assess because there is frontage on what could be developable property, or you defer. That's not a decision for tonight, but I'm sure it's something that will come up in the dialogue.
Sheet 6 and 7 go with also 8. And I just started being creative, so to speak, and taking a look at some multifamily options. And so this one is a 2-story. It was 3-bedroom, 2-story, great room, parking in the lower level. And so it'd be a little unique for this area, but 4 units combined would be ultimately about 72 feet long and 45 feet deep. And that's what each of those orange boxes would represent. You'd have to figure out how the driveways and the parking in front of the garages would all work out and things of that nature.
Just remember on this to disregard that dashed yellow line, which is what a section line. Remember, the city property boundaries are the
blue, turquoise and green. And roughly I sketched in the setbacks as well. So the first one, okay, yep, maximum density, you might be able to get 16 units. But I think in actuality, you'll be looking at the layout in sheet 7, 3-4 units for a maximum of 12 units.
And with, I'm guessing that with 3 buildings, you could conceivably have access off 18th and or Hawthorne, or the primary access could, like the single family scenario, be off Lowell.
And the way I looked at it for all these options, all the access is coming off of Lowell. As Greg said, you might be able to have access off of any of the streets, but this was kind of my assumption.
And Lowell's a nice neighborhood. I mean,
Yep.
the optics are good of that approach.
Multifamily.
That would be the option of, 4, each building being a 4 unit. 4 units. So not high density.
Similar to
Kind of
what
like
I,
what we got for my house over there.
Could be apartments, could be condos.
similar to what I mean, I based it on what is shown on page 8.
So if I'm looking at page 6 or 7.
Yep.
On each of those parcels, they would fit the 4 units?
It would be one parcel with 4 units.
So that would be more like that?
Nope, that's a single apartment complex.
Oh.
We'll get to that one.
Next
So it
up.
would be
Okay.
like three sections of 4. Right, but that's the only thing that's gonna be on that property
Well,
then.
right,
So,
this is just another
I
idea.
Gotcha, okay,
so it'd be, Darla, so it would be this
right,
fourplex is one of those orange boxes.
okay.
So either 3 or 4.
So each of those Could have,
Each of those orange boxes.
could have
is
that on there.
4 separate
Gotcha.
units.
Okay. Wow.
Would you, I mean, if this is the back of the lot, would you do the sidewalk?
For the south side, they got something like
Since there's
that.
no
Yeah,
sidewalk on Hawthorne on that side
Yeah.
of, or on 18th, I don't think we would do sidewalk. Not that it couldn't, it's just presently not there, so you would have a sidewalk going to nowhere. Now, I shouldn't say that, a little further to the south on Hawthorne, there is the sidewalk. It does dead end when the road changes from urban section on the south side to rural.
And there is, I'm seeing right, there's sidewalk on the east side of Bull Colts up
Up
to
to
the
that
last
last driveway.
spot.
Yep.
So it's almost like, I'll say it before somebody else does, it's like this, in some ways, the city excluded itself from putting sidewalks around that parcel, or at least pending a decision on development.
Okay.
The other thing a city or any developer could do, because the city wouldn't be the land developer here, but there could probably be provision for an easement between Hawthorne and Blue Colts that would, be somewhere closer to the base of that triangle and would still afford a connection from Hawthorne over to Blue Colts and the rest of the sidewalk network without going all the way up to that point. Which, unless someday there's sidewalk beyond, it's like, well, where does that get you?
Right, all right.
All right, yeah, well, that's true. That's quite true.
Mr. Bittner.
Thank you for the work. Good outreach. I think initially for the benefit of the city, wouldn't tonight we just decide that we'll sell this, it could be residential, sell it to a developer or any party that wants it, because they can review these options and determine what they want to do. And rather than trying to select one of these options and market it that way. It seems to me, let the market decide what they want to do, and who wants to buy it. And we sell a piece of property for a residential development.
I don't disagree with you, Mark, and I think where we're heading is, right now, the zoning is industrial.
Yes.
So right now, anything that would go there would need to be looked at on the industrial or commercial business side of things. So this is looking at other options. Can we do some sort of residential out there? And from the first couple options, yes, it looks like it depends on how much a developer wants to stick into the property to make it cost effective. And so,
Or maximize the return on it.
Yep.
Question.
so
So would it be appropriate then if we go tonight to make the move that we'd like to see more property for residential? Make the motion that we suggest we rezone it from commercial to R1, R2, or R3, sell it, and see what the market responds to this offer? Is that what we're,
I don't think where you want to go right now would be to change the zoning, but market it saying we have 1.33 acres, presently zoned, but willing to look at rezoning. And I can't speak 100% for Plan Commission, primarily because the Plan Commission could say absolutely not. We don't want to rezone it. We want to keep it industrial. But
That would be advice to the city council, which could then heed that advice or not.
Yeah.
One thing that we hadn't discussed, this might also require, I expect it will. They should be aware of it. They don't have title to the land, but an amendment to the comp plan. The long-term future use of an industrial park was probably identified as industrial. That could at least be pursued to show, to show future use as, I think, as some manner of residential. that still doesn't make the final decision, is it multifamily or single family?
Mhm.
But otherwise, we'd be saying to a prospective developer, you not only need to pursue the right type of residential zoning, you need to pursue a comp plan amendment. That may be asking a little much. So that could be an intermediate step that at least says, well, this is now eligible for possible residential type zoning without getting into the specifics.
Didn't we have an inquiry for a gas station convenience?
We
store?
did last year, there was discussion of that. And actually, I think that's where the idea of, well, if we're gonna look at alternative uses, perhaps residential would make the most sense, first came up.
We have plenty of gas
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Although we could use a quick trip on the north side.
You're right, I mean, and obviously the city's never marketed it for commercial uses either, it's been industrial park.
So then,
It also, that would create an opportunity for some dialogue with the neighborhood, which I don't know. I would think most people would see potential residential uses nearby as less intrusive than industrial.
Sheet 9 is basically showing a multifamily traditional apartment building. I do have a second sheet that has 2 buildings crammed in, literally crammed. But this is kind of the more simplistic version. Garages on the south end with parking on the southwest and southeast faces of the building. So that would be your primary entrance, again, coming in off of Lowell, the back of the building, fronting against Hawthorne and 18. So again, and where I came up with this was the original concept plan or plans for the former Hanson Florist site.
So that's 15 units?
15 unit, yes. 2-story, 15 unit. With 1 parking stall per unit and then 1 parking stall in front of each garage. So again, as Mark had indicated, a developer could come in and put 2 12-unit buildings on 24 units of density, and that might fit better. This is just things that I had relatively available as far as concepts. So yeah, it's basically showing there's options out there besides the industrial commercial type.
Two decisions, we have to determine a price and make a move that we agree that this now is available to potentially residential development in some fashion. Here's some options for you, or maybe you can get it out in the market. Is that the goal at this point? Best goal?
I think at a minimum is that does council want to move forward with pursuing that? You may want staff to come back. I don't have an idea on pricing, for example. By the way, and I apologize, we're kind of building an airplane in mid-flight here without a planner, but actually the future land uses map out of the current comprehensive plan shows the intent that that area be residential. Now that wouldn't stop us now from taking existing industrial zoning and allowing an industry there, but it likewise negates what negates what I said a few minutes ago. We would not need to change the comp plan. This comp plan anticipates a residential use on that corner.
So the motion we're looking for is to acknowledge that that's how we want to proceed and authorize staff to take the next steps.
I think that would be fair, which would include coming back with a recommendation regarding pricing. Because I'm going to assume right now, we're not offering up TIF assistance. That has to be, if it's needed, a development of the scale, frankly, shouldn't need it. Price. And do you want to list it? Does the city just put a for sale sign out there to take proposals and contact the city manager's office, or hopefully very soon again, the community development office?
Yeah, because I mean, the pricing would depend if we go with the R1 single family lots or the multifamily single units.
Well, any type of improvements would be necessary, would be up to the developer. Now, the extension of a road, I think that could be a city cost. But it would then be assessed to the adjacent, well, it could either be an extension cost, borne on the developer, with a portion of it then being also assessed to the adjacent property owners, but since utilities are already there, it would just primarily be grading, graveling, and pavement.
Well, this is a 1.33 acre site, assuming it gets largely disturbed in the process of construction. Would there be the need for on-site stormwater management, or is the proximity to that stormwater pond north?
I'll say the proximity to the pond should help, but I would have to verify that with McMahon. I'm gonna say that it's in the drainage basin.
I like the idea of, of course, the development bearing the upfront cost. We're not talking utilities and PSC regs here, but the utility, the developer development bearing the upfront cost with provision if any of the properties along which street improvements are made in the future are subdivided or developed in any way, would be a deferred assessment. Because likewise, you're going to hear an argument against imposing assessments, but there likewise shouldn't be a windfall as a result of extended street improvement.
How far does the current pavement go on Lowell?
Halfway up,
Just past where the trees start to.
there's that easement line, or there's the city property line, and then the easement just above the large numbers. Maybe 25, 30 feet north of that.
Oh, okay. We got 150 feet or so to go, 125 feet.
I want to say all of 150 feet to get the paved to the dead end of the. Right, too bad.
Is that the better option than doing all the curb cutouts for each individual lot if we did it that way?
Again, it depends on if the developer wanted to go single family with a hammerhead.
Mhm.
The other is, do we want to lock in on a traditional cul-de-sac, which would now potentially mean the city would have to take a look at acquiring that southwesterly property.
Yeah.
Even though turning your back, if you will, to Lowell, but I'm sorry, to 18th and Hawthorne is maybe a little different. It's not how the neighborhood is oriented. You know, everybody on Hawthorne fronts on Hawthorne. As somebody, I can speak as someone that owns a lot with a heck of a lot of frontage that goes to a point in the backyard. I'd much rather have a pie-shaped lot where the yard that's big is the backyard versus the front side. I think from a single family standpoint, there'd be some real advantages to orienting it. Plus, although there'd be an impact on Lowell, it wouldn't have any traffic or safety impact on a busy state, an already busy state highway coming in with Hawthorne. And I guess how the neighborhood receives a residential proposal, this leaves that open. We're not asking if we go this way, a decision up front on single family versus multi-family. that would come through the planning commission recommendation at a public hearing.
Oh, sorry.
In my mind, I think, like we have to really do first, is there a consensus of the city council that we want to see residential, not determine exactly which option, but we want to see it. Secondly, I think we have to do more research, see how much we have to sell it for, and then identify the contingencies, which way the residential goes, where taxpayers don't pay, the city doesn't pay, and how we can assess the costs of these changes to the development. So I think, development is good for residential, and I think we got to do some more research, but that's what I suggest we approve tonight.
Right, we don't want it to be like Sandy Bay where we put all the money up front, let the developer worry about all the details.
We don't know which option the developer wants, he wants apartment complexes, or, and then.
And unlike Sandy Bay, the infrastructure is already pretty darn close. And
Right.
any extensions are going to be pretty much directed to their site plan.
That would be my motion.
Okay.
Does that make sense? Today?
So that would be for
So
the
it'd be-
council, I'm sorry.
A motion to allow the staff, to investigate and market the property as potential residential.
Yeah, and determine which option the developer wants to take. And you want to be cautious, like, we don't want to put the cost in the city, we don't want to put the cost on existing residents, we want development.
Right. Well, I think all the scenarios Matt put together are desirable in, their own independent ways, so whether it's single-family homes or multi, I think that's a great idea. So. Okay, so Mark made a motion. Anybody want to fill a second? Do we need a roll call on that? To allow the staff to investigate, marketing this as a potential residential? To allow the staff to investigate this property to be marketed as a residential instead of an industrial property.
With the idea, I guess maybe goes without saying, but the council would be open to proposals that would range from single family to two family to multi-family. And that would be dependent on what a developer comes in with. And I guess I'm hearing that, I'm sorry, I'll only be here for 2 months, but I'm hearing an expectation of some return on the value of the land and covering, and the developer covering the cost of any infrastructure extensions to serve the land. We expect, based on the concepts Matt's done, that it primarily be extending an improved surface on Lowell.
And developer will have to develop and plus, we also, staff also would do some idea of pricing too, that property. So,
And the CBA just went through a process of selecting a realtor. You might want to piggyback on that, or I'll leave that to the council. And there'd be questions we'd come back with. I think it's fair to ask up front, you know, not part of the motion tonight, but with the council's expectation, be it be a curb gutter and standard width street. From where I sit, I think we ought to be happy whether it's asphalt surface or concrete surface, either way, as long as the developer's bearing the cost.
I would remain consistent with what is already constructed south of, north of 17th to the end of the existing pavement, which I believe is concrete.
Concrete through the curb gutter.
Concrete with curb gutter. Once it gets into the development, they can do this. Yeah.
If they want to propose an alternative, that's up to them. Not to clutter the motion, I think the motion is presented. But I'd love to get this back fairly promptly. Engineering, easy for me to say, but wouldn't take long to come up with a cost estimate on extending the street in the manner you just discussed. And then, you know, what's seems a fair price for the lot, at least get something out there for a listing.
Okay, so we had a motion and a second. Do we need a roll call on this or?
Discussion.
Okay, any discussion?
Okay.
Decide what.
I just didn't hear a call for
Ask
discussion.
for the lot.
That's gotta be part of it too.
I'm thinking it's gotta be worth $70,000. Let's see, be pretty fair.
Well, Matt's gonna investigate it more.
I think we'll, work with a realtor and come up with a cost of this lot.
Yeah. Got it right.
Okay. Very good. Roll call vote?
Probably a good idea.
Shannon Derby,
Aye.
Bill Claire,
Aye.
Doug Brown,
Aye.
Bonnie Shingalunas.
I just want to make clear, this is just to look for a developer, correct? That's what we're voting on? I mean, to offer it up for it to be developed?
It doesn't make any, nor could it make any, with the motion, make any representations or assumptions about ultimate
Because,
decisions on sale price, zoning, site plan approval. Those would all remain with plan commission and with the council per ordinance.
okay, all right.
Carol Leclerc. Aye. Mark Bittner.
Aye.
Motion passed.
It would be our intent to bring this back to the council in June. I'm gonna say the second meeting since we're already in the short week. Trying to strike while the iron's hot here.
All right, let's
We've
move
got
on.
single family development going. We've got some duplex condos going up on a lawn vacant site up next to Lanza's on Tannery. So we've got developers doing some things. It's a good location. Thank you.
All right, let's move on to item C, consideration of development parameters for city-owned 2.3 acre former Eggers Industry site on the East Twin River at 19th Street.
This is much more, this is the skinny handout with color photos. Yep, this is, yep. On the first page, you've got to turn it so the words Eggers Site Vicinity Map are at the top if you like having north at the top. So what you see there in kind of a lime green color extending from 20th Street on the north to to a point south, about just past that yellow section line, is the former Eggers site, which was about 3.5 acres. You remember the city acquired the whole lot for the primary purpose of the stormwater pond that was put in on the north part of the site. That leaves a 2.325 acre development site to the south. We spent a lot of time on creating a TIF district and pursuing a development agreement for a very appealing market rate apartment development. That didn't happen there. So as we look at Plan B, and we've had a couple of calls just in the last month from folks who want to kick the tires on this site, I thought it was good to come back to the council and talk about perhaps some parameters for what we want to see there. By the way, you know this probably, but the property at 1303 19th Street, which is labeled there, 1303 in red, right on top of that building, that was acquired last fall, also from J and Mary Struve under an option agreement that we executed at the time, gosh, a few years ago, that the city bought the Eggers site. So that's also in play, as is a former Eggers parking lot between 1304 and 1919 on the north side of the street, that little skinny parking lot. But you all know that in the context of this site, parking gets pretty important in a hurry. So anywhere you can fit it in. Maybe an easier reference is the certified survey map that's on the second page of this. And that again identifies lots 1 and 2. We've addressed 19th Street is vacated, and that's included wholly in the development site, the 2.325 acres, as is a easement, which I believe we have released. It says to be released. If not, it can be released. That was north of the former 19th Street. So that is the development site.
In the last two break.
Yep.
Is that where the brick building is the?
No, lot 2 is vacant. The brick building is across the street at the southwest corner of River and 19, where it says, where it says City of Two Rivers 1717 Park. That, it's not labeled on here because it was irrelevant to the survey, but that's where the building is.
So lot 2, 1 and 2 was originated that previous.
That was the-
lot.
Well, no, lot 1 is the stormwater pond. That's not available. Lot 2 is the development site we were addressing with the previous developer. They indicated that their pro forma did not work based on the then prevailing interest rates. Yeah. I don't know if this is helpful or not, but I excerpted from an email I sent to a realtor recently. I did leave his first name in there purely by error, so good luck. Just recap that it is 2.325 acres. Talked about what Eggers did on the site up until they moved out to Highway 42 with a beautiful new plant. The old plant was demolished in 2006. The floor slabs were broken up to facilitate drainage, and the basement and foundation walls, for the most part, were pushed into the hole and covered. So that does make it kind of interesting when you try to do boring. That was in keeping with our code at the time, but that could be challenging for site redevelopment. You might want to be fishing some of those out of there. The city did purchase it in 2019 from J. and Mary Strew, who owned it personally. Purchased 3.4 acres. I'm being repetitive here. Stormwater pond was divided off. That left a 2.325 acre site. It's presently zoned planned unit development, which is a zoning district that allows for various residential uses. The beauty of a PUD is it gives you greater flexibility as far as setback and placement of the building. It does, however, require a specific development agreement, a specific development plan and agreement be approved by the council. So any developer, if it's going to be all residential, would come back and still need to get approval of a PUD plan for the site.
So lot 2 still give us access to that river line?
That's addressed in here too, about public access to the river. It is located in a blight elimination TIF district created in 2021. The tough thing is the clock is ticking on that district, and we're losing some years off it. The city would anticipate retaining a strip of land for public pedestrian access along the river edge of the property. For initial discussion, assume a minimum of 25 feet in width. That also means for the developer, the city's got responsibility for that water edge, which generally is expensive. Even while the city was engaged with the developer for over a year pursuing a possible market rate luxury apartment complex, that deal wasn't finalized. The site is available. Council has not established formal parameters for redevelopment of the site, but I noted we're going to be discussing this tonight and would expect a stated preference for market rate for apartments or condos. I don't know if it's beneficial or not, but I think there needs to be some minimum cited. This is not a site that we're looking at dividing into single family home sites, for example, like maybe what happened with the last one. I simply put a number here at a minimum unit count of 40, minimum project investment of 8 million, which would be about 200,000 per unit. That doesn't mean that's what you have to bring in, but the other thing I did not put here, but I verbalized in a couple discussions, is I think you'd get extra credit if there was a commercial or food and beverage component on the lower level. We've heard that from members of the community. If you really want to try to enliven and revitalize this waterfront, make a development part of the downtown. So I think at least there would be favorable consideration to having. And by the way, that would probably mean going to PDD, Planned Development District, because our PUD zoning is for solely residential. It can be multifamily, but it's for residential. I do note the city has both phase 1 and phase 2 ESA or environmental site assessments reports on the site. The sellers were very good. They let us go into heaven wouldn't have it. And we have since acquired the parcel of 130319, typo there, street. Could be used for construction staging, additional parking, or what have you. I didn't address in here, but obviously it's in a TIF district and most developers aren't shy about asking TIF assistance. You'll remember CR Structures proposal for this property. They estimated they're going to spend somewhere north of $15 million on initially a 51 unit building and then maybe a twin as phase 2. The city's proposed TIF assistance. Again, they have to make a case, but just so you recall, the city's proposed TIF assistance on that development was $900,000 borrowed in the form of an upfront TIF grant and $900,000 on a pay-as-you-go as money comes in from the additional increment. So I guess I was wondering if this is still pretty general, but if the council is amenable to these proposed terms, and I guess primarily looking at point number 9 on here. There's nothing magic about 40. It's just, to me, that's at least a medium density use of the site. You certainly would want to, I assume there's a preference to still retain some ownership of the water frontage for future public access. That's consistent with our waterfront master plan. And yeah.
40 units, the developer might buy it, including more, but a minimum of 40, I think is a good number.
Right. I mean, if somebody comes in with an amazing proposal for 38, you might say yes.
We need to refine that, it's a minimum of 40 condos or 40 market rate apartments.
Yeah, the way it's written right now, because I've understood council to say on the downtown waterfront, we want to see market rate housing, either owner occupied like condos or rental. If you want to be more specific, that's fine. I just left it there. For some reason, in past discussions, seen a lot of appetite for condo development. I don't understand why that is.
I've never seen more owned property.
I think we all would.
That would be my preference.
Yeah.
But I don't know if that restricts the development. Can you say a minimum of 40, which is 50% of owner occupied?
You can say that. That's up to the.
And then you went on to say the minimum is a $4 to $8 million investment.
And again, that's an arbitrary number. That would equate to at least 200,000 per unit.
So Marky, are you saying if somebody came with a proposal like CR Structures did, you would say no for the luxury apartments?
Ask for anything up front.
Yeah.
Maybe we reassess it, but I think it's in the best interest of the city to sell this, get something going there.
Oh, absolutely. I agree
And I
there.
would make the motion that Greg's saying in 9, but at least try to suggest on the front end, 50% owner occupied. For every 20 condos. And, stick with the $8 million minimum investment, waterfront access available to the city, and try to remarket it and see what we can do.
It'd be a very subjective statement, but if again, I'm sure maybe, but if it was the, the city would, these are the basic parameters, but would prefer to see owner occupied, i.e. condos, and would prefer to see, doesn't mean we will, some commercial and or food and drink component that at least, I don't know what that means. That means you might get more favorable consideration if you ask for development assistance. By the way, the asking price, what we were looking to directly recoup as a city from the developer for the sale of the parcel was $200,000. That is simply based on prorating the acquisition cost of the property and rounding up a little bit. That might be negotiable, but I'd still be comfortable throwing that out there as a minimum for the city. That's in contrast to what we just said on parcel 310, but we've had that number out there, and it does relate to historic acquisition.
The only other comment I would make is under item 7 for the pedestrian access. define that that minimum 25 feet needs to be outside the floodplain.
Okay, good point.
Because if you go from water's edge, it may end up being in the floodplain, which means you wouldn't be able to do anything.
As I recall, those big rocks that we've outlined the site with when we had high water, those sit just at the edge of the floodplain. We got them.
I want to mark.
No, high water mark is gonna be, potentially where the water line is. I'm saying outside the 100-year floodplain, which is potentially higher, it is gonna be higher than your ordinary high water mark.
Is there an OHWM up the river?
I don't know.
It seems we're always dealing with floodplain and floodway on the river. Yeah, but you're quite right. We don't need 25 feet of mud flat. We can't do anything with it. And that does become a bit of a constraint on the development side. Because it's kind of safe to begin with.
What if, the developer wanted to put some docks in or something? Would that be an issue with the right of way?
Something could potentially, that's a good
I
question.
mean, if you have a restaurant or something, kind of like Sheboygan.
It would probably, I don't know the legalities, it might very well have to be city developed with some sort of a lease arrangement, because,
Okay.
right here, the public trust doctrine in Wisconsin, I know you can't sell water rights.
The pedestrian way can just be an easement, which means they own all the way up to the water, and then they just make the improvements for the dock.
So they would have private ownership of it. Yeah, and didn't bring a map, but there is an established bulkhead line for this area. Conceivably docks could be extended. The other problem you've got is the channel doesn't hang tight to the west bank, so you might need some dredging.
Oh, okay.
Serious dockage. We haven't, who knows where the funding will be, because there's changes happening in the world. But we have in the past discussed some boating infrastructure grants that might make it advantageous to go for publicly funded docking, or like transient docking for folks coming in and out.
I think that would be as appealing a marketing tool if we express there's willingness to talk about that.
Yes.
So the developer. If anybody buys that property, how many people are gonna want to vote? It will benefit us, and the development also give voting access and other docking. There's a shortage
Or
of
even
docks.
kayaks or,
Yeah.
yeah.
Shortage of docks in some rivers.
Yeah.
That might encourage the developers too, to look at resident or business at a lower level too.
I think we have some wetland and maybe floodplain issues, but that street end at the end of 20th Street, now that is on the other side of the pond, but the drainage pond.
Yeah.
But that could be a fairly attractive kayak canoe access for the general public and for tenants. But it's a fair criticism I've heard from the community. It's high time we be pursuing a plan B for this property. This one, we're not waiting on Hamilton, we're not waiting on environmental remediation, the city owns it. Much like we're able to demonstrate with the new hotel down at the other end overlooking the Hamilton site, there can be good things happening around the edges of that site, which ought to be prized for this community to see redeveloped. I'm not telling you guys. So, and I know what I brought you is kind of vague, but I guess perhaps to endorse the concepts that are shown in the handout here, the bullet points, with the addition of that minimum 25-foot public ownership or easement for waterfront public access, the 25 feet upland of the floodplain. We'll look into the ordinary high water mark thing.
Is that, based on the firm maps, or how are you,
And that further there be an expressed preference that the market rate housing units be owner occupied or condo, and that the project include on the first floor level some commercial / retail activity to introduce more activity. And that might be what becomes the determining factor on if they ask for TIF assistance, that's what you think they will, that any developer gets any money up front. You know, are you willing to do those things that make it not just meeting the criteria, but exceeding or, you know, coming closer to what the city would really, really like to see?
so we're gonna say preference for owner occupied,
Preference.
but if somebody comes in with a good proposal, we'll take a look.
Would not be rejected out of the, would
Absolutely.
be entertained.
So let me, if I can put, I make a motion to accept the attachment with the following changes that 25-foot public ownership is roughly.
Okay,
The development is a minimum of 40 with preference for private ownership and a strong preference for some commercial activities on the lower level of the property. Does that cover all the changes we talked about?
yes, anyone else have?
Well, does that include the docks for the, with the,
Oh, and city willing to discuss how to spend it, but there's a willingness in the city to talk about leasing docks to the owners.
And quite honestly, it'll end up being a public spend. There's going to be some public spend needed on improving the frontage of this property. I got probably very little question there. Climbing over those big rocks to get your boat is not a real option. And I'm assuming you're open to proposals that do that, that address potentially the 2.33 acres plus possibly the 2 other properties we've since acquired. If there's some logic there.
Which is that the one that has the number 8 in the corner?
The one, I'm sorry. On the north side of
Right.
19, on the south side of 19, is one that says 1303 on it. City
Oh,
owns.
I thought you said.
And
there's
then to
parking
the
over here.
north, there's a little skinny parking lot, and I believe it's between 1304 and 1900.
Oh,
Yeah.
really?
That was like a single row of diagonal parking spaces that Eggers used.
And 1900 is a owner occupied Airbnb now. Okay. Okay.
You know, I shouldn't even say it because I know it's a topic that has some passion in the community, or maybe I should say it. You know, if we add some market rate condos or rentals even, medium to higher density along the waterfront, that would offer people that want to own or lease a unit but see some income from doing a vacation rental, an option that we don't have now. Most,
Right.
not all, but most of the vacation rentals here are in single family neighborhoods, and that's where the friction points come.
Mhm.
Well, a lot of places, if you go on VRBO or other online booking platforms, there are a whole lot of choices that are condo or generally condos, but condo or apartment units in higher density development. So that's not the primary purpose for this, but if it wicks up some of that demand as an alternative to single family neighborhoods where there are some concerns,
Right.
that's probably a good thing.
I'm clear that we can talk about except for the vacation parking lot, I don't see that little strip one.
It's not on the
It would be
survey.
on the, well,
really hard to see.
it would be that parcel right there.
You can see it on the aerial,
You
Mark.
can see it on the aerial.
Does 1900 use that as their like parking area?
No, the only thing, we got a guy that we need to get a camera off there.
Oh,
I'm talking with our.
okay. Okay, that's kind of a strange.
Nature of
Parcel.
the vacuum or vacant lot.
And back here, like leave
What
there at
purpose
all.
is
Get here for
Temporary parking.
Oh, okay.
I don't recall exactly, but I want to say it was a single row of stalls,
Okay.
just to drive in.
Okay.
That parking lot wasn't part of the original deal. Or,
You know, I'm going from memory, but I'm pretty sure we did acquire with the original acquisition. It was kind of an afterthought, we haven't talked about it, but the city doesn't.
All right, so Mark made a motion to approve the parameters and changes as we discussed. Would anybody like to second that motion?
I will second that motion.
Any discussion?
Again, my intent is we bring back more details at one of the June meetings, including a question to council, do you want to go ahead and list this as well?
I can't imagine saying no.
There still is a sign, yeah. Right, well, I think that's the question. Right?
Okay, no more discussion, roll call vote.
Bill Leclerc.
Aye.
Doug Grant.
Aye.
Bonnie Shimalunas.
Aye.
Darrell Leclerc. Aye. Mark Bittner. Shannon Derby. Aye.
Thank you.
Pass. All right.
I anticipate a fairly brief closed session. This is in follow-up to one of the topics we discussed last Monday in close, but would request the opportunity to go into that closed session. We don't have any public here, but in case any public was looking to come down, I anticipate no action on reconvening an open session other than to adjourn for the night.
Okay, so I read. All right, so the city council reserves the right to enter into closed session per Wisconsin statute 19.85 1E, deliberating or negotiating purchasing of public properties, the investment of public funds, or conducting or other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session.
I'll make a motion to close that.
Okay, Bill's got a motion. Anyone want a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. Roll call vote.
Darrell Leclerc. Yes, aye. Mark Bittner.
I
Shannon Derby.
Aye.
Bill Leclerc.
Aye.
Doug Grant.
Aye.
Bonnie Shimalunas.
Aye.
Okay.
Close, and then you can kill the feed.
Yeah.